I'd like to introduce this next presentation on the Rothera redevelopment and the challenges of managing a construction site by Simon Garrod, British Antarctic Survey.
Hello, my name's Simon Garrod and I'm Director of Operations and Engineering at the British Antarctic Survey, and I'd like to talk to you about how we delivered major construction projects at Rothera Research Station and at the same time how we managed to minimise the impacts and maintain station outputs. So I'm going to talk about three main areas: the actual construction projects we undertook and are undertaking, the challenges in delivering those, and how we made it work. And the image shows the runway at Rothera and the station just around it. So the first of the construction projects that we started at Rothera was the Wharf. So we're about to get a brand new vessel, the RRS Sir David Attenborough, which is much bigger than our current vessel, and as a result we needed a much bigger wharf that goes into deeper water, and also the old wharf was over 25 years old and needed replacement. So that was a very large construction project, and we're also in the process of updating the buildings and infrastructure at Rothera. The current buildings are old and to a degree have been built piecemeal. So what we want to do is to replace it with much more modern, much more efficient, better buildings and site-wide services, and combine many of the functions that are in lots of buildings into less but bigger buildings. So the first of those will be the new Science and Operations building, and the slide on the left clearly shows the old infrastructure and the slide on the right shows the new building. And the work on that started in January this year, so at the same time as the wharf was being finished off, we were also starting the groundworks for this building. So the challenges, well, when you're on the ground there, it seems like quite a big area, but actually when you consider it's got to house all the people, all the living facilities, and then you're starting major construction of building a new wharf, suddenly that space is quite limited. So the red line and the area within it shows the area available, and with all the machinery operations, the laydown areas, the new workshops, the temporary accommodation, the storage of rock piles, it actually became quite a small and very tight area for all those activities. A further challenge is that Rothera, we wanted to maintain an active runway, and not just for ourselves. Rothera is used by many of the National Antarctic programs to transit their small to medium-sized aircraft into the continent, and so we wanted to keep it running for that purpose too. And I think this is a very important image to show one of the big challenges we had, which is going back to that limited space availability mentioned earlier, was the proximity of activities to station infrastructure. So this is the area we used to construct the wharf frames. So they were constructed in this area here and then transported to where the wharf is and put into the sea, in simple terms. And the green building behind the large crane is the Bonner Marine Laboratory, and that was kept in use throughout the build program. Yes, we changed some of the processes and protocols around ways of working, but that just shows how close the activities are to infrastructure, and the people give a lot of scale in that picture too. Further challenges, because this is a multi-year build program, we had to keep the science rolling. If it had been a one-year only program, we might have thought about having a different philosophy and just doing construction and no science. But because this is going to go on for many years, we had to find ways to do both activities. And that science is both marine and terrestrial at Rothera, with a large focus on marine science of boating, diving, water sampling, etc. We also have all the long-term monitoring on station and in the field that we have to keep working. And at the same time, we were running some pretty major field programs, the biggest of those being the International Thwaites Glacier Collaboration. And of course we still have to maintain, till we build the new, we have to maintain and keep working all the old station infrastructure. And because it is old, that takes quite a lot of resource in itself. as well as all the life support systems. And then we had to work out what's the optimum balance of construction staff to normal station complement. And that took quite a lot of thinking about, and finding a balance between, obviously there's a drive to have more construction staff to do the projects quickly, or do you have less construction staff and take longer to do the projects to allow us to have enough people for science operations and operations support. So that took quite a bit of thinking, and we did increase the numbers on station and build accommodation and temporary accommodation to accommodate that, but there is a limit to what's a realistic upper number. Again, the machinery activities, the image on the right shows the groundworks being done for the new science and operations building, and the building to the right of that picture, it shows the dining room and social facility, and then the green buildings to the back, one of them is the accommodation building. So the proximity of machinery operations and noise and disruption to where people live and eat as well as work was something we had to consider, and then working out regimes to keep people not losing too much sleep. So quite a bit of challenge there. As we took the old wharf out, and there was sort of a year of no wharf, we clearly had a period where we didn't have a wharf, and yet we still had to resupply the station with food, fuel, and the usual supplies. So we had to look at solutions around that. I'll come to that. So how did we make it work? Well, I think one of the biggest single factors was, rather than doing it as a them and us with the construction contractors working independently, from the get-go we thought of it as a partnership and as a one-team approach. And I think that was hugely successful, because it was joint planning in all things and working together to deliver this, and sharing knowledge, which is key, particularly as the construction partners, whilst worked in some interesting areas, Antarctica was a new bit for them. So the integration was absolutely key. So there was a number of ways we achieved that. We had from a very early stage, the construction teams worked within the BAS building. We did lots of joint activities and team building events for those that would deploy. And I think a really key point that made a big difference was that the key contractor personnel visited Rothera the season before construction. So this gave a lot of context. They understood about the weather issues, the short daylight length, the end of a long supply chain, all those things, and I think it helped them to recruit the right team as well. So that was a really important bit, getting contractor staff south to see what it was like before the activity started. Clearly site supervision, site management, site safety is key, and again we worked as a one team between the construction supervisor, the technical advisor and the station leader, and the eagle-eyed will have spotted they're all female. And working as a team, it gives strength and depth, independent perspectives, mutual support, early resolution of issues, and sends out a great strong joint leadership, one team message. And sharing of operational expertise, all parties can learn from each other, and to use the phrase, the sum of the parts was greater than the whole. And site management and safety, having site tours, and even simple things like getting, say, the BAS staff to sit in the cab of the machine to understand the really limited visibility and the fact that the driver won't be able to see all the areas around the vehicle. It gives people a great awareness of the challenges for both parties. Site integration or segregation, zoning and layout was absolutely critical, and also having a good communications network. So because it's an air facility and we have a comms operations tower, we use that as a central coordination point for activities, and that worked really well. Clearly the people bit is the most important bit, and with a diverse workforce from doing different things required a huge management effort, particularly as it was a long season, long hours, and fatigue was a real concern. So we manage fatigue and mental health proactively, and it's important to resolve issues early. These are all common things when working in Antarctica, but it really polarised it, this project. and developing a social and sporting calendar where both all the groups came together was a really positive thing. Clearly, good food is a great morale booster, so we employed extra chefs and kitchen support, and extended meal times and routines to reduce pressure in the dining room. Just small but practical solutions. We built temporary accommodation, and a real key bit was we repurposed some of the areas on station to increase the areas for socialising downtime. That was a real winner. And we also increased internet bandwidth to accommodate the increase in demand for personal communications. We also repurposed some of the site functions. The boat shed that we used for the marine thing was too close to the wharf, so we actually put a temporary wharf in on where the arrow shows, and we also built temporary boating facilities using Weatherhaven tents, and then repurposed the boat shed into a messing facility and area for the construction staff to have somewhere to go in bad weather. It also reduced the time they'd have to spend walking up to the main station dining room, and less people walking around was less risk to people. So won on a number of levels. As I said, we had some big science campaigns. So how did we kind of keep that running? So we increased the support staff at Rothera to ensure that we could still maintain an active flying and field programme. We extended the season length to reduce the numbers of construction personnel so we could have the same outputs. It was just over a longer period, so less people, more time. And then we reduced some personnel movements through Rothera by moving them to West Antarctica via McMurdo, and also more Halley staff moved through Drumland routing to reduce the pressure at Rothera. And also things like putting additional fuel and supplies into Rothera before the wharf was removed. And so in summary, I think the integration of all teams from the outset and the one team approach was perhaps the biggest message I can give, that I think how it worked for us. Having very joined up site supervision and management, repurposing buildings and creating temporary infrastructure. I think exploring alternative solutions for how you deliver the signs. Planning ahead is crucial, and most important of all, look after the people. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed listening, and thank you very much.